السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له. ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له. ونشهد أن سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله تعالى عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا. أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. وقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم: كيف أنتم إذا يكون المعروف منكرا؟ وقال الصحابة رضوان الله تعالى عليهم أجمعين: أسيكون ذا يا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم؟ قال: بل أشد من ذلك. قالوا: وما ذا يا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم؟ قال: يأمر الناس بالمنكر وينهون عن المعروف، أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام. Respected learned scholars, distinguished guests, brothers and sisters listening in the masjid or at home or online, after greeting you with the greetings of Islam, today's session is to focus on understanding the values, social values of Islam. You will be aware that the Muslim community in the UK, since it has been migrating to this country for approximately 60 odd years, the experience of the early migrants who came to the United Kingdom has been very and was very different to the migrants to the UK who have just come perhaps even in the last 20 years. UK society was very much based on biblical values, Christian values, whether they may be Catholic values or whether they may be Protestant values. They were Christian values. And European societies were based on, more or less, biblical values. So the early Muslim community who migrated to the UK will have found, for example, church bells being sounded on a Sunday morning, a parade being sent into the streets by the local church, people dressing up to go to the church on a Sunday morning, no trade on a Sunday. Sunday was like a ghost town in many places. That was the early experience of the community who was embraced by the local communities, that the values of the Muslim community and the local indigenous communities, there was a degree of similarity. The value system was quite similar. Children, local children, would go to Sunday school. Just like the Muslim children were sent to madrasa or maktab or Quranic schools. Just like it was a big occasion to go for Jumu'ah. There was a degree of similarity. The churches were full and religion meant something. 60 years on, and fast forward, when was the last time you heard a church bell? When was the last time you saw a parade on a Sunday? When was the last time you saw a church full? The value system has changed. What is important now to the indigenous community is very different to what was important 60 odd years ago. But within that time, even the Muslim community has become indigenous. And by that I mean made in UK. More than 50% of the Muslim community is made in UK, which was very different then. And the census data that will be coming out in the next 18 odd months or so will prove that nearly about 55 to 60% is now made in UK. And we are a very young community. This young community is now facing up to a 21st century where the social values are very different. This young community includes my children, your children, our grandchildren, ourselves. Not only is it changing, but it is also to be noted that the rate of change is exponential, i.e. very, very, very fast. It is difficult to keep up with the rate of progress and change. Ask anybody who is sat here who's teaching in the maktab or Quranic schools or in the madrasa in the evening. They just about figure out how to deal with one challenge that the madrasa kids are going through. Perhaps at school or in wider society, and another one comes on their desk. Before they figure out that one, another one lands on their desk. And the lines are being blurred all the time. This is where we are growing up. And it is also the place where you have a challenge, there is an opportunity. It is also the place where we have an opportunity to contribute. Just like the Muslim community, our forefathers, in Muslim Spain between 711 and 1492, that's when the Muslim community was in what we call Spain and Portugal now, and Andalusia. Before the Muslims came, the Romans were there, the Visigoths were there. Muslims came to Spain, and very briefly they established the Oxford, the Cambridge, the Princeton, the Manchester, the Harvard of that age. Muslim contributed to knowledge, to science, to engineering, to civilization, and they contributed to the values of that society. This is why all that technological boom went hand in hand with values. And the core value was no matter where this human being reaches up to or progresses to, he should never ever sever his link with his Creator. Never break his link with his Creator. This is why within those same mathematicians, astronomers, scientists, equally were those awliya, those pious, righteous individuals who by day were scientists and by night were in tahajjud. And as part of that set of values that our elder generation will have seen, people were very neighborly. They looked after each other. Children were coming in and out of houses in the street. These are core values of Islam as well. Hazrat Mufti Sahib sat here, picked up a book when we were at Hazrat Molana Ibrahim Sahib's house on Usul al-Fiqh. Usul al-Fiqh is basically the principles upon which Islamic law is based. It's the philosophy of Islamic law. It's the thinking behind Islamic law. It's the thinking behind policies that Islam established. And those policies have certain principles, higher aims. If you understand those higher aims, you will begin to understand why we can't have alcohol in Islam. Why is drugs and substance abuse haram in Islam? Why the certain rules on marriage the way they are? Those 5 principles, these are referred to in Arabic as mahfuzat, i.e. social preservatory principles. For a society to function, these principles need to be in place. If these principles are not in place, then society will have cracks and will have problems. Let us first try and understand those principles of Islam, and let's see where the cracks are. First and foremost, Hifzuddin. Today, we call this freedom of religion. Islam established a principle that the human being has the right for his religion to be protected. From the early days, and if you see the verses of the Quran, Islam protected other religions. Where it was ruling a society, whether we take the period of the Khulafa'i Arba, the 4 rightly guided caliphs between 632 to 661, and the biggest period of those of extension, the first line of extension is the time of Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu between 634 to 644. We have the infamous battles of Qadisiyah with the Persians and Yarmouk with the Romans. Subject to time, I shall go into that later on. In that expansion, Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu extended rights, protection of religion. If you go to Muslim Spain, even today, to Cordoba, to Granada, to Seville, otherwise referred to as Qartaba, Garnata, or Ishbiliya in the Arabic language, or Malaga, you will see craftsmanship and architecture which was done by Muslims even in churches. The Muslims protected the churches and the synagogues, built the masjids as well, and gave the human being the right to worship who they wanted to. And of course the Quran was open for everybody to see, and the choice was there, and the consequences of that choice was to be understood by the individual. Hifzuddin. We call this today freedom of religion. Point number 2. This is Hifzul Hayat, protection of life. Every individual has the right for life to be protected. This is why in Islam, suicide is not allowed. Euthanasia is not allowed, because the human being does not have the right to take his or her own life. That life is a trust granted to us. Each and every single one of us is accountable for every moment of that life. This is why the awliya, Allama Qurtubi rahmatullah says, Hudal lil muttaqeen, Zalika al-kitabu la rayba fi, Hudal lil muttaqeen. In first rukus, first part of Surah Baqarah, you have the profile of 3 communities. The muttaqoon, who are the people of taqwa, who are the people of disbelievers, and who are the hypocrites. So the people of taqwa, Allama Qurtubi rahmatullah alayhi, there's a general level of taqwa as understood within Islam as a value, and that is to accept Allah Rabbul Alameen as the only one creator, and come into Iman. Then you have a second level of taqwa, and that is imtithalul awamir wajtinabun nawahi. To do what you have been commanded to do and stay away what you have been commanded to stay away from. And the awliya level of taqwa, those who are righteous, every single moment should be spent in a way that Allah is remembered. Even the heartbeat that beats, they train the heartbeat that with the mind is conscious of saying Allah internally. So even if a person is sat there, his heart will be saying Allah, Allah, Allah. So when the final moment comes, and the moment comes to depart from this world, this heart is engaged in the zikr of Allah. So protection of life. One way Islam established, you will have heard of the principle an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Islam had a system which is referred to as qisas. Ya ayyuhal lazina amanu kutiba alaykum al-qisas. O believers, a system referred to in the Quran as qisas has been decreed upon you. Qisas basically was a system that if a wrong had been committed, against a human being, then there was a system, Islam, to establish fairness, justice. If a life had been taken, then the relatives had a choice what to do with that. If a limb had been severed, then the injured victim would have a choice. What do you want to do now? This is the choice. And within this, the Quran says, وَلَقُمْ فِي الْقِصَاصِ حَيَاةٌ. And within this, you have a form of life being possible. Otherwise, we're going to have vigilante groups. There needs to be a system in place to deal with this social issue. Hifzul Hayat. You cannot just go out and murder somebody. You cannot just go out and kill somebody. In fact, even in a combat situation, in a war situation, in a battle situation, there were rules and regulations. Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu was to write to his governors, these are the rules. Don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. Even in a combat situation. Today's language, that is Geneva Convention. How to deal with prisoners, how to behave in a war situation. You cannot be aggressive. The aggressor needs to be punished because we cannot have society behaving in that type of way. Human life is valuable. Hifzul Hayat. That's why euthanasia is not allowed. The other terminology is assisted dying. And in this country, to the best of my level, we do not have this law at the moment. In some countries of Europe, we do. And some subgroups of Abrahamic religions equally do not support it. Because life is sacred. Life is sacred. Catholics do not accept it. Life is sacred. Hifzul Hayat, protection of life. So we've had qisas, euthanasia. Murder is not allowed. And where somebody has been killed, whether it's first degree, i.e. intentional, or by accident, there are equally rules and regulations there. As the Muslim community spread, society had to be governed. Every day we listen to the news and when the budget is announced, we look what is the next policy, or what the next party is coming into government and election. What are the policies? Islam had to rule. The whole of Spain, they ruled for 800 years. The Ottoman Empire, they had to rule. Europe. When the governor seat was based in Syria, in Damascus, at the time of the Banu Umayyah, between 661 and 750, they had to rule society. They had to make laws up, rules up. when they were from 750 to 1258, and the seat of governance was in Baghdad. And there was a split. The Banu Umayyah went off to Spain and set up another empire until 1492. And there was another split. We had the Fatimiyun in Egypt. Wherever the split was, Muslims established rules and regulations. And the higher aims: protect religion, protect life. This is why people who paid the levies that were placed on their heads, they would be protected. No matter who that person was, the Muslim had to protect that person. Hifzun Nasab, protection of your family lineage. If I ask the crowd here today, how many people know more than 3 people in their family lineage, i.e. your father, your grandfather, your great-grandfather? As we move along, everybody should know their father's name at least. We laugh, but sometimes in a society people do not know their father's name or their grandfather's name. And as we move on to the great-grandfather, the number of hands will decrease. The Arabs knew their family tree going back generations. And they did not need to refer to their smartphone or their notes or any piece of paper, because they had it in their mind. Not only that, but all the scholars not only knew their family names, but every single narrator of hadith knew the narrator's family names. If I give you an example, we don't have the yellow pages anymore. We don't have the local phone directory anymore. We have what we call the smart app, the smartphone. Look up people's. If you picked up all the Patels or all the Khans or all the Smiths or all the Jones, and every single one of them will have a family tree, those people who worked with the science of hadith knew the family tree of every single one of them. And hifzun nasab, the protection of your lineage and your family tree, is important for 2 main reasons in Islam. Reason number 1, who you can and cannot marry is linked with your family tree. Hazrat Mufti Sahib is sat here. Who you can and cannot marry. The Quran gives a description. حُرِّمَتْ عَلَيْكُمْ أُمَّهَاتُكُمْ وَبَنَاتُكُمْ وَأَخَوَاتُكُمْ. So and so is haram upon you. You cannot marry this person. You cannot marry this person. You cannot marry this person. These are rules and regulations within general society as well, Christian society as well, Jewish society as well. There is a common bondage here. And this was the set of values that the early generation migrated to. So the first reason of why it's important, and this is why fathers, when they write their birth certificates or on passport forms, put who their father's name is. Because it's important to know, because who you can and cannot marry is linked with this. Secondly, Allah Rabbul Alameen, through family ties, has given everybody an inheritance birthright. Who you can and cannot inherit from, Allah has decided. This is a financial matter, and Allah sends Surah Nisa. And within Surah Nisa, Imam Qurtubi Rahmatullah alayhi and other exegetes, other commentators of the Quran, write there are 29, if I remember correctly, rules and regulations that the Muslim community has been commanded to do. 29, for a society to function. And at the top of that list, Ya ayyuhan nasu ttaqu rabbakum allazi khalaqakum min nafsin wahida, the ayat that we listen to in a nikah khutbah. First and foremost, have taqwa. Your taqwa in your wealth is to spend it properly. Your taqwa in your health is to use it properly. Your taqwa in what Allah has given you ability to do is use that ability properly. Don't be arrogant about it. Taqwa in different situations can mean different things. And after that, There are two things mentioned in that verse, that is unity of origin and unity of a command. Where human beings come from. Ya ayyuhan nasu ttaqu rabbakum allazi khalaqakum min nafsin wahida. Allah Rabbul Alamin has created you from one soul. So the story within Islam is the human being has been created from one soul, Adam alayhi salatu wasalam. So the origin of the beginning of this human being is from Adam alayhi salatu wasalam. This is the Islamic view. From there, وَبَثَّ مِنْهُمَا رِجَالًا كَثِيرًا وَنِسَاءً. From this, Allah Rabbul Alamin has scattered many men and women. That's the unity of source, one beginning for everybody. Everybody. We can go into detail, well, how come we are different colors now, different races now? We can go into detail. This is not my point at the moment. Then the other thing is, تَسَاءَلُونَ بِهِ الْأَرْحَامِ وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ الَّذِي تَسَاءَلُونَ بِهِ الْأَرْحَامِ. And have taqwa, be conscious of Allah. What's the subject now? The subject is your relatives. Be careful of your relatives. Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam, Abdullah ibn Salam radiyallahu ta'ala anhu states, Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, Ufshus salam, spread salam amongst you. You will see when we're walking on the street, good morning, sir. Hello, sir. It's to greet. The greeting within Islam is assalamu alaykum. Peace be upon you. Peace be with you. Ufshus salam. That is one way to win the heart of an individual. A societal value. Something very, very basic. Ufshus salam. Wa'at'imu ta'am, and feed people. Because food is a basic need of a human being. If you're fulfilling a basic need of a human being, that is one societal value. Wasilul arham, join your ties. Join your ties. Don't be a person who severs and breaks ties. La yadkhulul jannata qati'un. That person who severs ties will not go into Jannah. The commentators say, well, he will not go into Jannah until that the consequence of severing ties will be met. وَصَلُّوا وَالنَّاسُ نِيَامٌ. Three things related with the public. Ufshus salam, spread salam. Feed people. Join ties with relatives. Three things with the public. One now with the Creator. Sallu وَالنَّاسُ نِيَامٌ. Perform salatul tahajjud when people are asleep. Because the strength to do those actions with the public and remain steadfast and consistent will come with your connection from Allah. If this line is connected properly, then your relationship with the creation will be full of love and compassion. Hadith of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So, hifzun nasab, protection of lineage. Where you have a scenario where the family lineage, family tree is not going to be established or is going to be muddled up, Islam will not allow that. So any form of having a child where the family lineage is going to become very, very grey, Islam will not allow that. And there are very, very young people sat here, otherwise I would have gone into detail. So any form of unnatural method where you have a child conceived, where the family lineage of that child is not going to be protected, Islam will have a view on that. Why? Because how are you going to say who that person can marry or not marry, and what is the birth inheritance right there? If we take, for example, adoption. Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, it is well known, adopted Sayyidina Zayd radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Therefore it becomes a sunnah. But a form of adoption where on paper, legally, whoever is the adopting parent becomes the legal parent and the biological parent's name is omitted there and there is no link there, that becomes problematic. Not adoption can't be done, but that method becomes now questionable because that child needs to know who the biological parents are. So whenever that child grows up, they need to know who they can and cannot marry. And we have had cases across the globe where people, boy and girl, have not known that they are brother and sister. They became very attached to one another and decided that they want to marry, then realized that they're actually brother and sister. As a societal value, when that goes out of the window, you begin to see where the cracks open. This is a social value of Islam. These were the values of UK, and many places still are in many families actually. This is the value of Islam, and the younger generation need to realize this. Because those values are coming from the Quran and the Prophet ﷺ, and the Quran for the Muslim is absolute truth. Surah Muhammad, وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَآمَنُوا بِمَا نُزِّلَ عَلَى مُحَمَّدٍ وَهُوَ الْحَقُّ مِنْ رَبِّهِمْ. Quran is described as haqq, the truth. So for the Muslim community, the Quran is the absolute truth. Of course, people are allowed to question it if they so wish. And many writers and many people who study Islam have questioned it. So, protection of family lineage. It is not just that the Muslim community protects it. Even within Scottish society, Welsh society, UK society, Irish society, there is a system of protection, protecting the name and who is the father. Sometimes you will see MC before a name. Sometimes you will see MAC before a name. And in Welsh names there is a certain set of letters as well, and in which I forget at the moment. Son of. Arabs had Ibn. Umar ibn al-Khattab, Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, Usman ibn Affan, Ali ibn Abi Talib. So the Ibn bit, which means son of, it was protecting the genealogy, the family lineage, as a societal value. And they always wrote who the so-and-so is the son of so-and-so, so-and-so is the son of so-and-so. How many times have you heard from this mimbar, this pulpit, Imam Sahib saying Umar ibn al-Khattab, so-and-so son of so-and-so, so-and-so son of so-and-so. How many times in our own social gatherings or social talk do we say so-and-so son of so-and-so? We normally refer to by the first person. Because the importance of that is linked with halal and haram. Including those who are children who have been milked by the same person. The same mother has milked them. That provides a connection as well. Whether marriage is allowed or marriage is not allowed. Whether hijab needs to be done or hijab not to be done. Hifzun nasab, protection of family tree. This is why you will know the story. Young people will have heard of Malcolm X. 1960s civil rights activist in the USA. Prolific speaker, orator. He called himself Malcolm X. He was referred to as Malcolm X. X in maths language is something that is unknown. You don't know X. Because he said, I don't know my family tree because my ancestors were taken as slaves from Africa, brought to USA or brought to UK, and the family tree was cut off. They may have been Muslims, may have been something else. I don't know what my family lineage is. Malcolm X. If you read his biography, how he came to Islam, he embraced the nation of Islam, then he went on the Hajj and embraced the real Islam. Malcolm X. And that is one of the most cruelest things that has been done in recent history, to cut off people from their family lineage. Because we don't know who's connected with who now. We talk about protection of rights. We have a Allah-given right of inheritance. If you cut off the family name there, even in a scenario, if a family has cut off a son because the father or the mother just did not like that son or the daughter, whatever, still they cannot cut off the inheritance right, because Allah has given that inheritance right. Protection of nasab, protection of genealogy, is the beauty of Islam that we need to realize. So protection of deen, protection of life, protection of your family name, your genealogy. Hifzul aql, protection of your intelligence. Where we do not have aql intact, rules change. If somebody is referred to as majnoon, a state of insanity, rules change. If somebody is in a state where they are unable to carry out their financial matters in a way that is not going to make them a huge loss, that person would be known as mahjoor. They will be prevented. And in today's, there was an infamous case just going on in the papers. Infamous case of a musical talent whose father had control over the asset. So where that is protection. Now because of this, alcohol is not allowed. Not only does alcohol damage your liver, alcohol has an effect on your mind as well. Because it will then, is there any doctors sat here? No doctors sat here. Alcohol, once you start consuming it, will slow. Allah Rabbul Alameen has made a system in our brain of how information is passed on from one neuron to the other neuron. Imagine a heavy traffic on a motorway. Slowly they begin to stop. The M6 is not far from here, so you know. Or the M25. Slowly comes to stop. In the same way, that system of communication where information is being passed on from one neuron to the other neuron, or one carrying agent to another carrying agent, because of alcohol coming into the way, now the information is stopping slowly, the speech is becoming slurred. With this intelligence, if you're aqil, intelligent, salat is becoming anbalig, salat is upon you. So there are so many rules and regulations connected with your state of your mind. Allah Rabbul Alameen has instructed us to protect it, the crown of the creation. Animals don't have salat. What does the human being have? So alcohol, substance abuse, drugs, all of those are haram. You may well have medical circumstances where you may need to use something that is normally haram. That becomes an individual case for the mufti to sort out and give you guidance on. Hifzun aqal. And hifzul mumtalakat. Finally, protection of what you own. Protection of what you own. Even in many countries across the globe, if a person was to commit larceny, stealing, theft of your possessions, you are entitled to some form of recompensation. Sayyidina Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, in his time, when he was Khalifa Caliphate, up to 634 to 644, I said, was Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala. Sayyidina Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu's time, then Sayyidina Usman, 644 to 656, from 656 to 661. Sayyidina Ali radiallahu ta'ala. In that time, Amirul Mu'mineen is Sayyidina Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, but on one occasion his armor was stolen. And it was stolen by a Jewish individual. Sayyidina Ali is Amirul Mu'mineen. He saw him in the marketplace. Said, "This is my armor. Give it to me." He said, "No, this is mine." Now we have a dispute. Who is the legal owner of this? Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu claims it's mine. The Jewish individual claims it's his. Further, the Jewish individual says, if you wish to claim it, either you produce some witnesses or take me to court. Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, Amirul Mu'mineen, is taking his case for an armor and it's being registered at the court in Madinatul Munawwara. At that time, the judge, the chief judge by that time, was Qazi Shureh. Qazi Shureh was an amazing legal mind, absolutely amazing. To talk about Qazi Shureh would require a lecture in itself. But he was a judge since the time of Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And if Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu fixed you as a judge, then you were something. Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu was taking his case to Qazi Shureh. He is Amirul Mu'mineen. He is standing in the witness box. Allahu Akbar. And the case is made. What is the case here? He has taken my armor. The rule in Islam is al-bayyinatu ala al-mudda'i wal-yaminu ala man ankar. If you're a claimant of something, provide the witness. Provide the witness. Because the person against whom the allegation is being leveled is saying, it's mine. Ali radiallahu ta'ala has asked for two witnesses. Two witnesses. Do you have two witnesses? I have two witnesses. By the way, as for witnesses in Islam, there's a whole section, Kitabu Shahadat. Sometimes one witness will be enough. Sometimes two witnesses will be enough. Certain scenarios you will have three witnesses. Certain scenarios, four witnesses are required. On certain occasions, you will need to go around the neighborhood up to 50 people. All these scenarios we have in hadith today. Ali radiallahu ta'ala says, I have two witnesses. So who are your witnesses? One is my freed slave, Qumbur. So bring him forward. What is your testimony? Qumbur testified, I used to work in the house of Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu. I am his freed slave now. This is his armor. I was a regular in his place. I knew it belonged to him. Okay, his testimony is accepted. Who is your second witness? Second witness is my son, Sayyidina Hassan radiallahu ta'ala. Here we come into legal wranglings. Differences of legal understandings. Can a son be a witness in a court of law or not? According to Sayyidina Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, the son could testify in his favor. That would not be seen as being prejudice or in favoring Sayyidina Ali. Qazi Shureh said no. In my court, that rule doesn't apply. In my view, a son cannot testify in favor of his father. Because son and father relationship, there will always be this idea in the mind that the son is favoring the father. I can't accept him. Who's in the witness box? Sayyidina Ali. And who's the judge? Qazi Shureh. So do you have another witness? I don't have another witness. Case thrown out. On what grounds? A technicality. A technicality. Sayyidina Ali radiallahu ta'ala, who would not trust Sayyidina Ali radiallahu ta'ala? Who would not trust him? But on one legal technicality, it was the decision of the court not to accept the testimony of the son. Case dismissed. Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, without any wrinkles on his face, exited the place of the court and went away. Because the process that Islam had established and was in practice was accepted. If something is yours, it's protected. By law, it's protected. This is why if somebody is caught stealing, they will be taken to court. But on this occasion, the case was thrown out. The Jewish individual, as soon as they walked up to the court, saw Sayyidina Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and realized there is no blemish on his face. He is not disturbed. And he says, Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, you know this armor is yours. You know this armor is yours. Here you are, take it. I am really impressed by what I saw today. Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu turned around and said, no, I gift it to you now. Allahu Akbar. Upon this Jewish individual, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah. The value system, I've only briefly touched upon it. What time is Salatul Maghrib? Briefly. Protection of deen. Freedom of religion, as we call it today. Protection of life. Every doctor will try their best to save the life. Look at the amount of work that is being done in hospitals under the NHS, just looking after COVID patients, even non-COVID patients. Or before the COVID situation started in any ward of our hospital. Those who have been into hospital, who have had relatives in hospital, will realize the care that is taken there for protection of a life, protection of lineage, family name, protection of your intelligence, protection of your possessions, and protection of your dignity and honor. Islam does not allow that anybody's reputation is just turned into gutter. That's why ghibat is not allowed, backbiting is not allowed, calumnia is not allowed. To talk ill of somebody, to accuse somebody of inappropriate behavior is not allowed. Because everybody has their dignity and honor. So these value systems change over time. Islamic rulings that are based on the Quran and Hadith don't change. There are some things that are non-negotiables. Where society is based on these values, inshallah you will see, you can read the examples of history. Where these lines are blurred, and I gave you one example of adoption. There are other examples. I gave you one example of the slavery trade. That society, according to the Islamic model of society, will not be the best way of running, and you may well see fasad, corruption. And the biggest thing protecting the family lineage is the family unit. And within that family unit, Islam based it on love, compassion. وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُم مَّوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً. Love and compassion. هو الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وجعل منها زوجها ليسكن إليها فلما تغشاها حملت حملا. Children. That family unit is the core thing of a society. This is why Islam put a lot of emphasis on protecting the family unit. Allegations against the husband or allegations against the wife was severely dealt with. Allegations of inappropriate behavior. Whose children are these? This is why nikah, the a'immah would say, of fiqh would say, have your nikah in a public place. Let the public, especially where you're going to live, the local area public, the local area masjid, do your nikah so people know that you have done nikah now. And to stop any ill chat against you. These are values of Islam. And these are the values of Islam that need to be protected, because the rate of change is just so fast that we need sometimes to be reminded, and we need to re-engage. This is a time that is called in education, learn, unlearn and relearn. You've learned something, now unlearn it and relearn it. Learn how to apply the learning you did before in a changing circumstance. This is called text v context. Apply that text into a different context. The 20th century is different to the 21st century. The last decade was very different to this decade. This rate of change and pace is so different, but the values of social values of Islam. Otherwise, engaging in social media may well become social mania. Our role is to provide peaceful societies, loving societies, where people's rights are not. And there are periods of history where Muslims have been at fault. And we need to openly acknowledge this. And in this, namaz time is just upon us. So in an age where I said the migrant community now experience is very, very different. The one connection with your Creator cannot be severed. Because when the connection with your Creator, with your Khaliq, with Allah is severed and broken, then you will begin to see changes in society. May Allah Rabbul Alameen protect us. May He show us the truth as it is. There's a dua of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Allahumma arina al-haqqa haqqan warzuqna ittiba'ah. Oh Allah, show us the truth as it is and grant us the ability to follow it. Show us falsehood, lies, deceit, roguishness as it is, and grant us the ability to stay away from it. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.